150,000 minor illegal immigrant children that have disappeared into this country into what is a modern slavery ring being facilitated by the Biden administration's trafficking of these children.
As new videos at the border between the standoff between federal agents and the National Guard go viral, something more sinister is cooking behind the scenes. Although not widely reported, thousands of children crossing the border are being trafficked into the country for prostitution and child labor. And it took one man, Dr. Phil, to expose this disturbing news on mainstream television. So what exactly is happening to children at the border? Crisis at the border.
Friday, Dr. Phil McGraw, he visited the southern border in Texas, meeting with Border Patrol officials to witness the ongoing crisis firsthand. He rightly criticized the administration for their failures, calling it, quote, a humanitarian crisis unlike anything we have ever seen before.
As the illegal immigration crisis continues to escalate, a disturbing trend has emerged: the growing silence of moderate, patriotic Americans. Over the past decade, people have become increasingly hesitant to speak out about political issues like immigration. The rise of social media has created a platform where individuals can be targeted, blacklisted, or even face occupational reprimand for expressing their concerns. This fear of backlash has led many to choose silence over voicing their opinions. One man has decided to lead by example in speaking out against the dire situation at the border. This is none other than renowned clinical psychologist and daytime TV icon, Dr. Phil McGraw. They threaten to boycott the business that you work at if they don't get rid of you or fire you. The ways you can be portrayed on social media platforms. People are just saying, look, it's easier not to speak out, and that has to stop, Dr. Phil said on Jesse Watters' Primetime. While on the show, the TV icon called on people who love the country and are concerned about the situation at the border to stand up and let their voices be heard. There has to be a call to action. This middle group of people throughout America that care about this country, love this country, need to say enough is enough and too much is too much. And I've got to stand up and speak up, he said. Dr. Phil's powerful words resonate with those who have felt silenced by the fear of being labeled as anti-immigration or haters. He emphasized the importance of not apologizing for having a border that's not a turnstile. The influx of migrants crossing the border has reached unprecedented levels under the Biden administration. According to recent reports, over 7.2 million undocumented immigrants have entered the United States, a number surpassing the population of 36 states combined. But why are these children being subjected to such unimaginable horrors? The answer lies in a combination of factors, including the lack of resources and the failure to enforce protection laws. Dr. Phil has personally witnessed the frustrations faced by border agents who are dedicated men and women, eager to do their job of patrolling the border, but instead find themselves acting as social workers.
They say that they're so overwhelmed with processing that that's all they can do. They've become social workers and processors and not investigators and border guards because they're just processing. The consequences of illegal immigration have become increasingly evident. In Athens, Georgia, the murder of Lachlan Riley, a college student, was linked to Jose Antonio Ibarra, a Venezuelan national who was in the country illegally. This tragic incident serves as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by individuals who enter the country unlawfully.
This comes after the death of Augusta University nursing student Lachlan Riley, killed on the UGA campus last week, allegedly by Jose Ibarra, confirmed to be in the country illegally.
Riley was reported missing by a friend after she did not return from her jog on the University of Georgia campus on Thursday. Her body was found later that day in the woods behind Lake Herrick, and she was unconscious and not breathing and had visible injuries. Adding to the complexity of the situation, the Maduro regime in Caracas has effectively banned the repatriation of any Venezuelan nationals the U.S. adjudicates for deportation. This poses a significant challenge in addressing the issue of illegal immigration and ensuring the safety and security of American citizens.
A potential setback for American officials at our southern border. Venezuela has stopped accepting deportation flights from the U.S. and Mexico after a deal between the nations fell apart. Those flights had been seen as a successful way to try to stem the flow of migrants from Venezuela.
Dr. Phil's perspective on illegal immigration is rooted in a deep concern for the well-being of the nation. He firmly believes in the value of legal immigration and acknowledges the need for a sustainable birth rate to support the country's infrastructure. According to him, it is crucial to differentiate between legal and illegal immigration and to have effective policies in place to protect the nation. However, during a recent appearance on The View, Dr. Phil dropped a bombshell that has left the nation in disbelief. He exposed the dark truth about children crossing the border into the United States, revealing that some of these innocent souls are being sent into a world of unimaginable horrors, prostitution, and sweatshops. The interview quickly became awkward after Sunny Hostin asked Dr. Phil about his upcoming interview at the southern border, which will air in his new series, Dr. Phil Primetime. According to the television personality, the head of all the border guards claimed that children coming into the U.S. with phone numbers and addresses written on their arms are most likely getting sent into prostitution rings or sweatshops. In essence, American citizens' tax dollars were being used to send innocent children to a life of unspoken horrors.
We are using American tax dollars to ship children into known prostitution and sweatshops.
While data regarding trafficking at the border is vague at this time, the Council on Foreign Relations reports that immigration authorities came across 152,000 unaccompanied minors at or near the southern border in 2022. The Human Trafficking Institute further estimates that 72% of human trafficking victims in the U.S. are immigrants. In February 2023, the New York Times published an investigation about migrant children being exploited. Migrant children, who have been coming into the United States without their parents in record numbers, are ending up in some of the most punishing jobs in the country. This shadow workforce extends across industries in every state, flouting child labor laws that have been in place for nearly a century, from 12-year-old roofers in Florida and Tennessee to underage slaughterhouse workers in Delaware, Mississippi, and North Carolina, as well as children sawing planks of wood on overnight shifts in South Dakota. Largely from Central America, the children are driven by economic desperation that was worsened by the pandemic. This labor force has been slowly growing for almost a decade, but it has exploded since 2021, while the systems meant to protect children have broken down. The Times spoke with more than 100 migrant child workers in 20 states who described jobs that were grinding them into exhaustion and fears that they had become trapped in circumstances they never could have imagined. In town after town, children scrub dishes late at night. They run milking machines in Vermont and deliver meals in New York City. They harvest coffee and build lava rock walls around vacation homes in Hawaii. Girls as young as 13 wash hotel sheets in Virginia. These are not children who have stolen into the country undetected. The federal government knows they are in the United States, and the Department of Health and Human Services, HSSS, is responsible for ensuring sponsors will support them and protect them from trafficking or exploitation. But as more and more children have arrived, the Biden White House has ramped up demands on staffers to move the children quickly out of shelters and release them to adults. Although HHS checks on all minors by calling them a month after they begin living with their sponsors, data showed that over the last 2 years, the agency could not reach more than 85,000 children. Overall, the agency lost immediate contact with a third of migrant children. So who is to blame for this situation? As it turns out, both sides of the political divide are blaming each other for everything that is going on. So let's start with President Biden. Well, the Biden administration's policy puts pressure on border agents to release families and unaccompanied minors into the U.S. within 72 hours has inadvertently created a perfect storm for traffickers. Impoverished Latin American families, desperate for a better life, are now incentivized to send their children on the perilous journey up north. Tragically, many of these children do not survive the treacherous path they are forced to take. Traffickers have taken advantage of this situation and provide children to unrelated adults, allowing them to more easily gain entry into the U.S. Once these adults reach their destination in the U.S., they return the child to the traffickers, who then send the child back to their home country to repeat the cycle. But that's not where the story ends. According to credible sources, many of these children now indebted to the traffickers end up being forced into the U.S. industry, often subjected to prostitution or even child pornography. According to Republicans, the dismantling of the border wall, a key promise of the Biden administration, has created a vulnerable situation at the border. With fewer physical barriers in place, traffickers have found it easier to exploit the chaos and confusion. They see an opportunity to smuggle innocent children into the country, knowing that the system is overwhelmed and unable to effectively screen every individual. The overcrowded detention facilities along the border have become a breeding ground for exploitation. With limited resources and personnel, border agents are forced to prioritize processing over thorough vetting. This has created a loophole that traffickers are all too eager to exploit. They know that the pressure to move people quickly means that some individuals will slip through the cracks, allowing them to continue their heinous activities undetected. Another contributing factor is the ease with which traffickers can obtain fraudulent documents. With lax enforcement and a lack of comprehensive identity verification, it has become increasingly difficult to distinguish between legitimate families and those who are part of a trafficking trafficking scheme. Traffickers have become adept at forging documents and posing as parents, exploiting the system's vulnerabilities for their own gain. Let's not forget the financial aspect of this crisis. The profitability of the sex trafficking industry is a driving force behind its expansion. Traffickers see vulnerable children as commodities, objects to be bought and sold for profit. The demand for commercial exploitation is insidious, and traffickers are quick to capitalize on it. They see the United States as a lucrative market where they can exploit the desperation of impoverished families and profit from the exploitation of innocent lives. Far from home, many of these children are under intense pressure to earn money. They send cash back to their families while often being in debt to their sponsors for smuggling fees, rent, and living expenses. However, amidst all these horrors, a lot of blame has been put on the former president, Donald Trump. So how does this crisis tie back to Trump, who has not been in office for more than 3 years? Trump blamed for the border crisis.
Senate negotiators have been inching closer to a border security deal after months of work here, but it could all unravel with former President Trump urging Republicans not to do a deal.
Just when it seemed that the Biden administration had taken the necessary steps to tackle the border crisis, Donald Trump swooped in and is threatening to cause further mayhem.
Because they were getting ready to pass a very bad bill, and I'll tell you what, a bad bill is, I'd rather have no bill than a bad bill. A bad bill you can't have, and that's what was happening in the House.
Well, it seems Trump is not a fan of the new border wall at all, as he called it a bad bill during a caucus rally in Las Vegas, Nevada. Trump even took to Truth Social, where he let his true feelings about the new border bill be known. Only a fool or a radical left Democrat would vote for this horrendous border bill, the former president posted. So what exactly is in the border bill that he is so against? What's really in Biden's bipartisan immigration deal? This deal, which combines $20 billion in emergency spending with policy changes, has been hailed by President Joe Biden as the toughest and fairest in decades. However, it has also faced criticism from both sides of the political spectrum. Progressives argue that it represents a return to the Trump era, while conservatives claim that it has too many loopholes to effectively address the issue of spiking migration at the southern border.
Well, the top line number is $118 billion. That is how much this bill will cost, and it's $12 billion more than President Biden asked for.
Proponents of the deal argue that the emergency funding is necessary to address the immediate challenges at the border. They contend that without adequate detention capacity, the system would be overwhelmed, leading to potential security risks and difficulties in processing asylum claims. It is important to note that the deal also includes provisions to address the treatment of detainees. The funding is expected to be used not only for increased capacity, but also for improving the conditions within detention facilities. This includes measures to ensure access to health care, legal representation, and other essential services for detainees. The debate surrounding the detention aspect of the deal reflects the broader discussions on immigration policy in the United States. Critics argue that the focus should be on finding more humane and effective alternatives to detention, such as community-based programs or case management systems. They argue that detaining individuals, especially families and children, should be a last resort. On the other hand, proponents of the deal argue that detention is necessary to ensure proper processing of individuals and to maintain border security. They contend that the emergency funding will help address the immediate challenges at the border and provide a more orderly and efficient immigration system. In the ongoing discussions surrounding Biden's bipartisan immigration deal, the aspect of asylum has emerged as a critical component. The deal aims to address the challenges and complexities of the asylum system in the United States. One of the key goals is to expedite the review of asylum claims, striving to ensure that no case lasts more than 6 months. To achieve this goal, the deal proposes empowering asylum officers to close out a claim rather than going through the lengthy process of immigration courts. This approach is intended to streamline the process and reduce the backlog of cases, allowing for more efficient and timely decision-making. To support this effort, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, would receive nearly $4 billion in funding. This funding would enable the hiring of over 4,300 asylum officers, significantly increasing the capacity to process asylum claims. However, the proposed changes to the asylum system have sparked intense debate and raised concerns among immigrant advocates. Critics argue that the deal would require asylum seekers to provide greater proof to seek refuge in the U.S., potentially making asylum largely unobtainable for those who are permitted to request it at ports of entry. The American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, has been vocal in its opposition to the proposed changes, arguing that they would eviscerate long-standing protections for vulnerable immigrants. They contend that the stricter requirements would disproportionately impact attract individuals fleeing persecution and violence in their home countries. Another significant aspect of the deal is the provision to ensure that asylum seekers facing rapid deportation are allowed access to legal representation. This provision recognizes the importance of legal counsel in navigating the complex asylum process and ensuring that individuals have a fair chance to present their case. Additionally, the deal includes a provision to grant lawyers to all unaccompanied children under 14 years old during removal proceedings. This infusion of $350 million for the Department of Health and Human Services aims to ensure that vulnerable children have the necessary support and guidance during the legal process. While the proposed changes to the asylum system have drawn criticism, proponents argue that they are necessary to address the backlog of cases and streamline the process. They contend that the increased funding for USCIS and the hiring of additional asylum officers will help ensure that asylum claims are processed more efficiently, reducing the wait times for individuals seeking protection. As the debate continues, it is crucial to consider the broader implications of the proposed changes to the asylum system. Striking a balance between providing protection to those fleeing persecution and maintaining the integrity of the immigration system is a complex challenge. The outcome of the bipartisan immigration deal will have far-reaching consequences for individuals seeking asylum and for the overall immigration landscape in the United States. It remains to be seen how the proposed changes will be implemented and how they will impact the lives of those seeking refuge. One of the most contentious aspects of Biden's bipartisan immigration deal is the provision for a potential border shutdown. Under this provision, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, would be compelled to close the border if daily illegal crossings exceed certain thresholds. Specifically, if daily illegal crossings top 5,000 migrants on average or 8,500 in a single day, the border would be shuttered. The implications of a border shutdown are significant and have sparked intense debate. Proponents argue that such a measure is necessary to regain control over the border and deter illegal crossings. They contend that a temporary closure would allow authorities to address security concerns, process asylum claims more efficiently, and prevent potential humanitarian crises. However, critics argue that a border shutdown could have severe consequences, particularly for vulnerable individuals seeking refuge. They express concerns that such a measure may violate international obligations to protect refugees and could lead to a humanitarian crisis. Advocacy groups argue that alternative solutions, such as increased resources for processing asylum claims and addressing the root causes of migration, should be prioritized over border closures. The deal also outlines the conditions for reopening the border after a shutdown. The administration would only be able to reopen the border if encounters of illegal crossings drop to 75% of the initial triggering number. This provision aims to ensure that the border remains closed until the situation is deemed more manageable and under control. Under the deal, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, would continue to consider asylum requests from individuals crossing at legal ports of entry during periods of a potential border shutdown. This provision recognizes the importance of designated entry points and the need to maintain a functioning asylum system even during times of heightened border enforcement. However, it's important to note that asylum requests made between ports of entry would not be processed, further emphasizing the significance of proper procedures and adherence to designated entry points. To handle the increased workload at ports of entry, officials would be required to process a minimum of 1,400 asylum requests per day under the terms of the deal. This requirement highlights the challenges faced by immigration authorities in managing the flow of individuals seeking protection and underscores the need for efficient and effective processing systems. One of the most contentious aspects of President Biden's bipartisan immigration deal is the provision that requires the use of funds already allocated for border barriers, specifically for the construction of a border wall. This provision has sparked intense debate and controversy as it seems to contradict Biden's campaign promises to halt the construction of a physical barrier at the U.S.-Mexico border. Under the deal, the Biden administration would be compelled to use money already laid out for border barriers on the construction of a bollard-style border wall. This type of wall, similar to what was seen during the Trump administration, is intended to be 18 to 30 feet high and equipped with anti-dig and anti-climb features. The aim is to enhance border security and deter unauthorized crossings. The inclusion of the border wall provision in the deal has drawn criticism from both sides of the political spectrum. Progressives argue that it represents a step backward, as it echoes the policies of the previous administration. They contend that the construction of a physical barrier is ineffective and costly, diverting resources from more pressing issues such as humanitarian aid and comprehensive immigration reform. On the other hand, conservatives argue that the provision does not go far enough in addressing border security concerns. They believe that a more robust and extensive border wall is necessary to effectively deter unauthorized crossings and protect national security. In President Biden's bipartisan immigration deal, significant provisions are made for Afghan nationals who have been affected by the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan. These provisions aim to address the unique circumstances faced by individuals who have fled their home country and provide them with opportunities for residency and protection. Under the deal, permanent residency would be offered to Afghans who received special immigrant visas following the withdrawal of U.S. forces in 2021. These individuals, who have worked alongside U.S. forces and are considered allies, would be granted the opportunity to establish a new life in the United States. This provision recognizes the sacrifices made by Afghan nationals and offers them a chance to build a future in a safe and stable environment. Additionally, the deal allows for Afghan nationals who are considered U.S. allies to be designated as refugees. This designation would entitle them to special protections from the State Department and, if necessary, immediate removal from Afghanistan. This provision acknowledges the risks faced by individuals who have supported U.S. efforts in Afghanistan and ensures that they are not left behind in a volatile and uncertain situation. Special immigrant status would also be offered to Afghan nationals who are immediate relatives of U.S. military members or veterans. This provision recognizes the importance of family unity and aims to provide a pathway for these individuals to join their loved ones in the United States. Up to 2,500 special immigrant visas would be offered annually, with a total cap of 10,000, ensuring that a significant number of Afghan nationals can benefit from these opportunities. The provisions for Afghan nationals in the bipartisan immigration deal reflect a commitment to honoring the contributions and sacrifices made by these individuals. By offering pathways to residency, protection, and family reunification, the United States demonstrates its gratitude and commitment to those who have supported its mission in Afghanistan. Generally, Trump wants the deal thrown out because it is an election year, and if the Democrats were to solve immigration, they would have more support from their voting bloc. For Trump, it is all about his selfish interests. The crisis could be solved, but Trump has instructed his fellow GOP members to reject the bill on arrival. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson revealed that the Senate deal would be dead on arrival if it reached his Republican-controlled chamber. He took to Twitter to show his disapproval of the bill, saying, "I've seen enough. This bill is even worse than we expected and won't come close to ending the border catastrophe the president has created." As the lead Democrat negotiator proclaimed, under this legislation, the border never closes. If this bill reaches the House, it will be dead on arrival. With Republicans staying firm on not passing the bill, we can only wait and see whether the crisis at the border will be addressed by the president or continue to deteriorate even as the election draws closer. If you enjoyed this video, click on the boxes playing on your screen to watch similar content.